Hello everyone, I'm Quinn the GM, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Tal'Dorei Reborn campaign setting. I would normally hold up the physical book, but that hasn't arrived yet. I just have the PDF here. But I've really enjoyed what I've read so far, and I'm excited to share my thoughts with all of you. Specifically here, this is going to be a focus on the kind of player and DM options in here. There's a whole kind of setting aspect to it. That's a lot, and I'm really excited to get into, but I haven't quite had the time to delve entirely into that as much as I have the player and DM option, so I could make a follow-up on that if you'd like to see it. Comment on that. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe and like the video if you like it. And thank you all for watching. Let's dive into my thoughts here. Starting off with the player options, the subclasses are great across the board. I design a lot of subclasses in my spare time, so it's great to see just such amazing design throughout. I think my personal favorites are the Bard College of Tragedy and the Paladin Oath of the Open Sea. Particularly the Bard College of Tragedy has a lot of incredibly flavorful abilities. It is the one I've most commonly seen kind of decried as overpowered out of these, particularly because they have an ability that allows them to regain inspiration should their allies fail, or critically fail, ability checks, attack rolls, saving throws, anything within 30 feet of them. And I think it's definitely powerful. That is entirely correct. However, I think that it's very much dependent on your party. This is an ability that gets exponentially more powerful the more people you have in the party and the more roles you have going on in the party. If it's a bard in a party of like 8 fighters with 3 attacks each per turn, it's going to be recharging like crazy. Whereas if it's just like a party of 3 and the bard is one of the spellcasters casting spells and not really rolling much, it's not much more powerful than anything else considered compared to like other bard abilities. Particularly the Eloquence Bard I think is also quite powerful. And furthermore, I think that the bard as a whole has a lot of really unique abilities that work with both buffing and debuffing a character at the same time, and I really like that concept. I've built several things like that myself, and I think it's a very fun risk-reward to incur. Speaking of risk-reward, another subclass I loved was the Blood Magic Wizard. These wizards essentially use their own vitality to fuel their spells, and in a literal sense, it can like replace the material component for their spells, specifically costly ones, with actually like taking necrotic damage for that. I think that the idea of trading off vitality for power is often a very tricky line to walk. It's tough to balance that. But I think in this case, it's done incredibly well because the wizard is something that's already a glass cannon, and this just pushes that further to the extreme. Any vitality that they're sacrificing is much more valuable because they have less vitality than, say, a blood hunter would or a fighter would. And I just like that design a lot. Furthermore, they have abilities that allow them to essentially inflict damage back on an attacker who's attacked them. Excuse me. And I think that's also really cool, and it's very good to kind of consider what hits are worth taking as a wizard, and I think it's going to create some very interesting interactions between clerics and wizards specifically, because Death Ward can be a lot more valuable on a wizard if it can prevent a massive hit, and then you can deal that same damage back immediately. Moving on to the Oath of the Open Sea, this is another really, really creative one that I like a lot. This was published on D&D Beyond about a year or so ago, maybe a little more. And I actually have a player in my home game who's been playing the Oath of the Open Sea for quite a while. Shout out to Corvus Freehill, our halfling paladin. It's a really, really fun oath, and I think that it fits very well, and it's also been updated and refreshed here. Something that I really didn't expect is it has 2 new spells that come with it. They're Freedom of the Waves and Freedom of the Winds, I believe. They're both very unique. The Freedom of the Waves particularly creates like a vortex that you can trap enemies in and teleport all around yourself at 3rd level. It's really, really cool. The Winds one I like, but it's not quite as good in my opinion, particularly because it gives advantage against being restrained and grappled, which are already things that the class is immune to as of 7th level. So this is good for characters that wouldn't have that, but it's not added to any other spell lists on there. It's just there, and I guess for bards who take it for magical secrets. But overall, I still really, really like the subclass. It's full of flavor, and I love ocean-themed subclasses in general. And I think that 5e could really use more of them. Not just speaking as somebody who's currently running an aquatic-themed campaign, but that's just my take. In terms of subclasses I liked less, I was not a fan of the Blood Cleric in the original Tal'Dorei book, and I'm still not a huge fan here. It's definitely better. They've improved it and kind of streamlined a lot of the abilities, but my main problem is the spell list, and particularly the Cleric having access to both haste and slow, which seems incredibly powerful given the cleric's non-concentration, healing, and damage options, as they can just start those at the beginning of the battle and just keep them and keep healing the party and just stay away. Plus, they have better armor proficiency and saving throws than wizards do generally. So that kind of just creates a bit of an imbalance where a cleric can pretty much do it all, which I'm not a huge fan of single players kind of monopolizing things like that, but I'm sure it can work in your game if you want to go for that. And furthermore, the Runechild Sorcerer. Every so often, I get subclasses that I just don't understand, no matter how many times I read. This Scribe's Wizard in Tasha's was a lot like this, that I've read it like 5 times, but I don't quite get it. Runechild's very much like that for me. It's definitely more streamlined than the original version in the original Tal'Dorei, but I still need to kind of wrap my head around it. It could be good, could be bad, but I'm not sure. The Moon Cleric, I also really like. I meant to mention that earlier. But the Moon Cleric is really, really creative, particularly in their Channel Divinities, which I really like. And it creates a very interesting double concentration option that's not really seen anywhere else in 5e, and actually seems to be pretty balanced, considering as when you're concentrating on 2 spells, you disadvantage on concentration checks. So overall, it kind of ends up creating an equilibrium between the potential gain from having 2 spells up at once and the potential downfall of dropping both at once, potentially having more consequences. The section on feats was a really pleasant surprise to me because I had no idea that there were going to be feats in this book when I initially opened it. There's a really good variety here too, and they're all pretty unique. I think my favorite is one that allows clerics and wizards, I think it's called Flash Recall, to immediately pick a spell they don't have prepared and prepare it for the day as a bonus action. They can do that once a day, and that's it. I think that my initial thought was that it was quite powerful, but upon reflection, especially for the classes that do prepare spells, ability score increases are very rare, and to give up one of those for this ability once a day, I think it's actually a really, really fair trade-off, and I like it a lot. There is another feat for spellcasters I do think is a bit too much. Particularly, there's a feat that allows spellcasters to cast both a bonus action and an action-leveled spell in the same turn, which I would think is fairly balanced if Healing Word didn't exist. So I'd be fine with that on like a wizard or something that doesn't have Healing Word. But overall, I think that could use a little tuning down. But I like the feats a lot overall. They're a really wide variety, and they can add a lot of flavor to otherwise fairly standard characters. I like feats for that generally, and I like them a lot for that here. Continuing to the magical items, the vestiges are as cool as ever, and there's a really wide variety of them. And it's really cool to see a number of magic items that were speculated about for the duration of both campaigns, mostly campaign 2 in this case, and never had official stat blocks, actually made official now. Particularly, I really like the Storm Rider boots, which we saw Caleb use at the end of campaign 2, and the Sky Sail, which is a new item here. It's sort of a flying surfboard type device that is used by the Ashari, which I personally hope Orm gets one, since he's in Ashari and could continue the trend of Liam's characters having a flying option like Caleb did. My favorite vestige, personally, is the Armor of the Valiant Soul. This armor is kind of this scale mail that's a very nice green coloration. I'll throw up a picture here. And it has very cool connections to the lore of the first campaign. And I really like the idea of having more unique medium armor, as I think that light and heavy both have a variety of unique magical options, but medium's always kind of been overlooked, both by player classes, as medium armor does not seem to be taken by too many, other than clerics that don't have heavy armor, and some rangers that I've seen. But I think that it's great that it gets some love here, and I really, really like that item. There's also a section on optional rules, and the portion of this that stands out the most to me are the rules for resurrection. At high levels in 5th edition, death can be quite trivial. If you have just 300 gold pieces, you can just pop somebody back up for less than the price of an uncommon magical item. I've been using an adapted version of the Critical Role resurrection rules in my own campaign for years now. And I've had great success with it. It creates dramatic moments and makes risk more of a pervasive thing throughout the entire campaign, as death could be the end no matter what, no matter how many diamonds you have or spell slots. I think that it's great to have official rules for these, or like an official rules, because this isn't Wizards of the Coast. My only critique is the random table of lasting effects from death, as some of these are much more strange than others. Particularly, there's one, I think it's the 4th option on the list, that replaces your character with a doppelganger that looks exactly like you and your soul is trapped elsewhere, which I would really want to talk with my player before I implemented this, rather than just randomly rolling it, because I think certain players would be quite upset with that, and other players might have a fun time with it, but I think that that's one small shortcoming in what is, I think, a very, very good rule system. It's also pretty difficult to come back from the dead in these rules. I think it's like DC 22. It's like a DC 22 wisdom check minus the level of the spell in your spell casting, which is quite high and higher than I thought it was, which is really interesting. And I need to implement that as well into my games. So I'm a big fan of the resurrection rules here, 100%. Monsters are up next. I initially took personal offense to the magma land shark, which I thought was just a big magma bullet, but it's actually really cool in its design, as it's able to actually swallow creatures and they kind of melt well inside it because it's like a furnace. And I also think it's just more well designed than the initial bullet, but I have a whole video on that if you want to check it out. Moving on, though, the thing that stood out to me with this book is it's got a wide selection of high-level creatures, which I love. I think there's not enough support for high-level D&D just throughout 5th edition in whole, and I really like that this book provides a lot of that. Particularly, there are a lot of really interesting constructs. There are platinum golems, mage hunter golems, and they're all really unique and really varied, and I think that it really expands a creature type that hasn't been very prevalent in 5th edition at all. And I think it also makes the Juggernaut Barbarian in this book a lot more kind of applicable, because there are a lot more golems that could be prevalent throughout the world they could do extra damage to. So that is one of their kind of core abilities there. The standout among the high-level monsters, for me at least, is the, I need to make sure I'm pronouncing this right, which I probably won't, Adrenok? I don't know. It's the thing on the cover, which I'll throw up here. It's kind of the flagship of the book, and it's another construct that is almost this dragon-like being that is just very magical. And it's got really interesting story elements and a really cool stat block that I don't quite want to spoil here because it could tie into potential stories that people want to tell in Tal'Dorei, but I'm a big fan of it. And then the final section of this book is a number of epilogues and stat blocks for all of the members of Vox Machina. I really like this, and it was nice to see a really conclusive end to their stories and see what happened after they did the end of Campaign 1. I realized I might have almost accidentally spoiled things there, but I don't want to do that. It's great to see that they are able to come to life in a variety of home games with actual stat blocks here that DMs could use if they want to include them in any Tal'Dorei adventures. I'm also incredibly happy that they included Tyrion, who's my favorite member of Vox Machina, albeit the fact that it's published by Darrington Press probably tipped the scales a bit in his favor there. So those are my first impression thoughts on this very good book. I am really loving it so far, and I'm looking forward to diving even deeper in here. I'm planning on using a few of these monsters in my home game at various points, hopefully soon. And I'm really excited to get that experience. If you want to see a follow-up on this or anything more specific, maybe dive into specific subclasses or monsters or whatever, please comment and let me know. I'd love to hear feedback. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'm sure I'll do more on this type of thing in the future. And thank you all for your time. I hope you have a nice day. I've been Quinn the GM. See ya.